What would you do if the people who raised you claimed that your 5-month-old baby girl was a source of bad luck? I am not exaggerating, and I did not misunderstand anything. That year, my daughter was only 5 months old. She did not have a mother anymore, she could not speak, she could not walk, and yet my own family labeled her as someone who brought misfortune into their lives. You are probably wondering how it ever got to that point. To understand it, I need to walk you through everything that happened. I will explain how my parents and my sister ended up cutting ties not only with me, but also with the rest of our extended family. Before I go any further, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to my story today. I hope you are having a good day. My name is Hunter. I am 33 years old, and I live in Chicago. The events I am talking about happened almost 3 years ago, during Christmas of the year 2022. That Christmas marked the exact moment when my relationship with the people who gave me life came to a complete and final end. That Christmas morning, at around 10 o'clock, I was sitting quietly on the couch. I had my daughter, Sophia, cradled in one arm, and I was holding her bottle with my other hand. She was only 5 months old at the time. Her big, round eyes were locked onto my face while she calmly drank from the bottle. It was one of those rare peaceful moments that parents treasure. Unfortunately, it did not last long. My phone, which was sitting on the table nearby, suddenly vibrated. I glanced over and saw that the message was from my mom. Without thinking much about it, I picked up my phone and opened the message. The words on the screen stopped me cold. In that message, my mom wrote that I was not allowed to bring Sophia to the Christmas party. Then came the words that shattered me. She said my daughter was bad luck. As soon as I finished reading that sentence, my entire body felt stiff, like it had turned to ice. My grip loosened, and the bottle almost slipped from my hand and fell to the floor. I stared at the message again, hoping I had misunderstood it. But there was no mistake. Sophia's name was right there. My mom knew exactly who she was talking about. There was no confusion at all. A surge of anger rushed through my chest, but it was mixed with something even worse. It was a deep, cutting pain, the kind that feels like a knife being driven straight into your heart. My daughter had lost her mother just 3 days after she was born. She had never felt her mother's arms around her even once. And now her own grandmother was calling her bad luck. I looked down at Sophia. She kept drinking her bottle peacefully, completely unaware of the cruelty that had just been aimed at her. She looked up at me with innocent eyes, full of trust. At that moment, the tightness in my chest was no longer about anger. It was pure heartbreak over what kind of world my daughter was being forced into. While my thoughts were still racing in every direction, the doorbell rang. I stood up quickly, still holding Sophia, and went to open the door. Standing outside were my neighbor Riley and her daughter Harper. That was when I remembered that the day before, Riley had said she would bring Harper over that morning so she could play with Sophia. Riley lives next door to me. She is a single mother. Her former husband struggled with alcoholism and abused her repeatedly. Eventually, she made the hard decision to divorce him and press charges. He ended up in prison with a conviction for domestic violence. Her daughter Harper was 5 years old at the time. That little girl loved coming over to my house. She enjoyed playing near Sophia and making her laugh. I owe Riley and Harper more than I can put into words. I am a single father. My wife, Emily, passed away only 3 days after giving birth to Sophia. She suffered from severe postpartum complications and died suddenly. I never even had the chance to say goodbye. In the days that followed, I was drowning in grief while trying to care for a newborn at the same time. During that period, Riley came into my life like a lifeline. From the very beginning, she helped me take care of Sophia. She taught me how to prepare formula at the right temperature, how to bathe a newborn gently without frightening her, and how to calm her down. There were nights close to 2 o'clock in the morning when Sophia would cry nonstop. Riley could hear her from next door. She would rush over and ring my doorbell just to help me. Honestly, without Riley, I do not know if I would have survived those first few months. The moment I opened the door, Riley took one look at me and knew something was wrong. She studied my face with concern and asked, "Hunter, what is going on? You look really bad." I shook my head, trying to steady myself, and said, "Riley, can you help me finish feeding Sophia? I need to deal with something important right now." She did not hesitate for even a second. She took Sophia from my arms. Harper immediately started running around, putting on little performances to entertain the baby. Meanwhile, I had something urgent to take care of. I needed answers from my mom. I needed to know how she could send such a heartless message. I stepped outside onto the porch, closing the door behind me so Riley and Harper would not hear. My phone was shaking slightly in my hand. I still could not believe what had just happened. All I could think was, what in the world is wrong with my family? I pulled up my contacts and called my mom. The phone rang and rang, but she did not answer. I tried again. Still nothing. I called a third time, with the same result. Then my phone buzzed. She sent a short reply. "I am busy." Reading that message only made my anger grow stronger. I called again and again. After nearly 10 calls back to back, she finally picked up. Instead of explaining anything, she shouted at me. "Why do you keep calling? I told you I am busy." That only poured fuel on the fire burning inside me. I could not hold it in anymore. I raised my voice and demanded an explanation. "I need you to explain that message you sent me," I said. There was a short pause. Then her voice came back, cold and distant. "If you have something to say, then say it." I spoke slowly and clearly. "Why did you tell me not to bring my daughter to the party? Why did you call Sophia bad luck?" She sighed, sounding annoyed. "If that is why you are calling, then hang up. I do not have time for this nonsense." Her complete lack of concern pushed me past my limit. I shouted, "What is wrong with you? She is only 5 months old. She already lost her mother. Is that not cruel enough?" Before I could say anything else, the line went dead. She had hung up on me. I tried calling again immediately, but the next 2 calls would not even go through. I stood there on the porch, feeling like someone had slammed a fist straight into my chest. But I was not done yet. I scrolled through my contacts and called my dad. After a few rings, he answered. I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "Dad, Mom just told me not to bring Sophia to the party. She said Sophia is bad luck. Did you know about this?" There was silence on the line for a few seconds. Then he spoke in a flat, cold tone. "Your mother is right. Sophia is bad luck for this family." Those words stopped my heart for a moment. The man I once respected and looked up to had just called his own granddaughter bad luck. Before I could respond, he hung up too. I stood there alone, gripping my phone so hard my hand hurt. My body was shaking with rage. I screamed into the empty air, calling them names I had never imagined using toward my own parents. After that outburst, I collapsed onto the porch steps. My head was spinning. I kept asking myself what I had done wrong. What had Sophia done wrong? She was just a baby who could not even crawl yet. And yet, my own parents had branded her as a curse. I thought about Emily in her final days. She fought with everything she had to stay alive for our daughter. She made me promise to protect Sophia no matter what. If she knew what my parents were saying about her child, it would have destroyed her. In that moment, I understood something clearly. The bond between me and the people I once called Mom and Dad was finished. I was not the one who walked away. They destroyed that bond themselves with their words. I also made a decision right then. I was going to that Christmas party, and I was bringing my daughter with me. While I was still sitting there, the door opened behind me. Riley stepped out, holding Sophia, who had finished her bottle and was smiling. Harper walked beside them, holding Sophia's tiny hand and gently shaking it to make her laugh. Sophia giggled, her face lighting up every time Harper acted silly. Anyone passing by would have thought we looked like a perfect family. A father, a mother, and 2 little girls. But that was not the truth. Riley was only my neighbor, and my own parents had just turned their backs on us. Riley looked at my face and immediately knew something was wrong. She asked me what happened. I did not say a word. I simply handed her my phone. She read the message, her eyes widening in shock. "That is heartless," she said. I nodded and looked at Sophia, safe in Riley's arms. She had no idea that her grandparents had just rejected her. Seeing that made me think about the months after Emily passed away. My parents and sister barely visited Sophia. In the first month, they came a few times. The second month, even less. After that, they almost disappeared completely. Every time I invited them over, they had excuses. They were busy, not feeling well, or had other plans. I told myself they needed time. But now I knew the truth. They did not want to be part of her life. Emily's parents had passed away years earlier. That meant Sophia only had my parents and my sister besides me. And this was how they treated her. Riley asked me what I planned to do and whether I was still going to the party. I did not hesitate. "I am bringing her," I said. "They will have to explain themselves to my face." Riley nodded and offered her help without question. I thanked her deeply. Then I went inside to get ready. That evening, around 7 o'clock, I placed Sophia into her car seat and started driving toward my grandmother's house. The drive was about 20 miles, but it felt endless. My grandmother, Linda, was 84 years old that year. Every Christmas, the entire family gathered at her house. It was a tradition that had never been broken. When I arrived, cars lined both sides of the road. Through the windows, I could see a crowded living room full of people laughing. I carried Sophia to the front door, took a deep breath, and rang the bell. After a minute, the door opened. My mom stood there. The moment she saw Sophia, her expression shifted from shock to anger. She stepped outside and shut the door behind her. In a low, threatening voice, she said, "I told you not to bring it here." That word hit me hard. She had just called my daughter it. I demanded to know who she thought she was talking about. She ignored me and told me to leave. I reminded her that this was my grandmother's house, not hers. She warned me again about bringing bad luck. That was enough. I pushed past her and went inside. The room fell silent. Everyone stared. My dad sat beside my grandmother. My sister stood near the table. My grandmother looked shocked. I stood there with my daughter in my arms, ready for the truth to come out. When my grandmother asked why my parents said I was traveling, I told her everything. Then I handed her my phone. Grandma's voice was sharp and cold when she spoke again. "Do you really think you can lie to me too?" My mom opened her mouth, but no words came out. She just stood there frozen. My dad, who was beside her, went from red-faced to pale in a matter of seconds. Grandma handed my phone to Uncle Robert, who was sitting close by. He read the message carefully, and I watched his expression darken as he reached the end. Without saying a word, he passed the phone to the next person. The phone kept moving from one relative to another, slowly circling the room. I stood still, watching each face as they finished reading. Every reaction was the same. First shock. Then disbelief. Then they all turned to stare at my parents. Aunt Karen, who was still holding Sophia, finally broke the silence. She looked straight at my mom and said, "Are you out of your mind? That is your own granddaughter. And you call her bad luck?" My mom did not respond. She stood there, completely alone, surrounded by judging eyes. That was when Grandma Linda pushed herself up from her chair. She placed one hand on the armrest and stood slowly, but every step she took toward my parents carried weight and authority. She stopped directly in front of them. Her face was tight with anger, and I knew right then that this was not going to end well for my parents. Her eyes were sharp, cutting straight through them. The room was so quiet that I could hear people breathing. Then my dad did something I never expected. Instead of apologizing, he tried to defend himself. He looked at Grandma and spoke with bitterness in his voice. You do not understand, Mom. That baby is extremely unlucky. The moment she was born, her mother died. If that is not bad luck, then what is? I could not believe what I was hearing. He had just blamed Emily's death on our daughter. Every part of me wanted to rush forward and hit him. But before I could even move, Grandma reacted first. Her hand flew up and struck my dad hard across the face. The sound of the slap cracked through the room. His head snapped to the side from the force. Everyone froze. My dad brought his hand up to his cheek, staring at Grandma in shock. His voice trembled as he asked, "You hit me? Why would you hit me?" Grandma did not answer. She raised her hand again and slapped him across the other cheek, even harder than before. He stumbled back a step. Then she pointed directly at him, her voice icy and firm. "Be quiet. You are 60 years old, and you talk like an ignorant fool." My dad stood there holding his face, eyes red, saying nothing. In front of Grandma, he was still just a child being scolded. Seeing this, my sister decided to step in. Her name is Jessica. She was 28 at the time. She walked forward, clearly upset, and said, "Grandma, you do not understand. Sophia really is bad luck. Mom and Dad are not lying." Grandma turned toward her and asked calmly, "Bad luck? How?" Jessica took a breath and began listing her reasons. "The first time I visited Sophia, I got pulled over on the way home and got a ticket for speeding. It was almost $300. I nearly laughed out loud. She had been speeding and somehow blamed it on a baby. But she kept going. The second time, after we visited Sophia, Dad climbed onto the roof to fix something and fell. He had to stay in the hospital for 2 weeks. I remembered that clearly. Dad fell because he refused to wear a safety harness, even though Grandma had warned him countless times." Jessica's voice grew louder. "And the third time, after seeing Sophia, the real estate project our whole family invested $1 million in completely collapsed. We lost everything. If that is not bad luck, then what is?" She finished and looked around the room, clearly expecting agreement. Instead, a few people struggled to hold back laughter. Uncle Robert spoke up. "How fast were you driving when you got that ticket?" Jessica answered quickly, 85 miles per hour. "And what was the speed limit?" he asked. She hesitated, then muttered, 65. Uncle Robert turned to the room and said sarcastically, "So the 5-month-old baby was controlling your gas pedal? That is impressive." The room erupted in laughter. Jessica's face turned bright red. Grandma was not laughing. She looked straight at Jessica and said, "Were you driving, or was the baby driving? You broke the law. That is your fault. And you are blaming a baby who cannot even crawl yet. Do you hear yourself?" Jessica said nothing. Grandma turned back to my dad. "And the roof. How many times did I tell you to wear safety equipment? You never listen. Now you fall and blame a baby?" My dad stayed silent, his earlier arrogance completely gone. Aunt Karen spoke up while holding Sophia. "And that $1 million project? Which one was that? The one in Phoenix?" My mom nodded stiffly. Aunt Karen shook her head. "I remember that. I warned all of you not to invest. I said the risk was too high. No one listened." Uncle Robert sighed and said, "Listening to all this is embarrassing. Speeding, blame the baby. Ignoring safety rules, blame the baby. Bad investment, blame the baby. You are 60 years old, and this is your thinking?" Another relative, Aunt Susan, added, "That poor child lost her mother days after birth. And now her own grandparents treat her like this." My parents and Jessica stood in the center of the room, completely alone. Not a single person supported them. My mom tried to speak, but Grandma raised her hand. "I did not give you permission to talk." Then something unexpected happened. Sophia shifted in Aunt Karen's arms and let out a loud fart. loud enough for the entire room to hear. Everyone froze. Sophia stretched a little, smacked her lips, and kept sleeping peacefully. For a second, there was silence. Then the entire room burst into laughter. The tension vanished instantly. Uncle Robert laughed until tears came out. Aunt Karen laughed quietly so she would not wake Sophia. Aunt Susan bent over laughing. I laughed too, for the first time that day. Only 3 people were not laughing. My dad looked like stone. My mom's lips were pressed tight. Jessica stared at the floor. Aunt Karen smiled at Sophia and said, "Look at her. Such terrible bad luck. She is adorable." Everyone laughed again. Grandma smiled while looking at Sophia. But when she turned back to my parents, her expression hardened. After a long pause, Grandma spoke firmly. "I want all 3 of you to apologize to Hunter and Sophia." My dad shook his head. "I did nothing wrong." My mom agreed. "We did nothing wrong. We are not apologizing." Jessica stayed silent, clearly refusing as well. Grandma took a deep breath, then pointed at the door. "Get out of my house. Right now." My dad scoffed. "You are kicking me out? I am your son." Grandma replied immediately. "I do not have a son who calls his own granddaughter bad luck. Leave." My mom protested, but Grandma pulled out her phone. "Leave now, or I call the police." Before she could dial, Uncle Robert stepped forward. "We will handle this." He looked at my dad. "Walk out, or get dragged out." Other relatives stepped forward, forming a line. My parents panicked. Uncle Robert and Uncle David grabbed my dad and dragged him toward the door. Aunt Karen pushed my mom out. Another relative pulled Jessica along. Outside, my dad shouted threats. My mom screamed insults. Jessica glared at me with hatred. I stood inside holding Sophia. She looked up at me calmly, not crying. Grandma stepped outside and said, "You are no longer family. Your inheritance goes to Sophia." Then she turned back inside. That night, Sophia and I finally had a real Christmas. 3 years later, Sophia is over 3 years old. She runs, talks nonstop, and wakes me every morning demanding breakfast. That is my